Welcome to Time to Teach with Tammy, the podcast that gives tips, advice, and suggestions to teachers by a real teacher. So sit back and enjoy. And oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe. And we're back. Welcome to episode 51 entitled Nonlinguistic Representation PLC Part 2. Now, a long time ago, I did a first part, and I really thought that I would probably have multiple parts to this because this was a year-long PLC, but I just kind of found that I had so many other topics to talk about, and I feel like I don't know, this topic didn't really lend to as many episodes as I imagined. I will try to find when I did that and then link it in the show notes so that in case you missed the first part, you can go back and listen to it, just because in part 1 of this, I talked about what we were doing in our PLC, some of the strategies I've been trying out, and I'd really like to finish that up in today's episode to just kind of let you know what other things I have been doing. And I apologize because my email was on and I'm not going to edit that out because I'm being lazy. So forgive me for that. I just closed it off. Anyway, so that's what today's episode is going to be all about. We're really going to be focusing on everything else that I've been trying since I initially started this non-linguistic representation, different strategies, what have I found that works or what not. So I'm excited for that. So that is what today's episode is going to be all about. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with our wins and fails segment for the week. So win for the week, it's been kind of a difficult week, but I definitely have a win other than the fact that I made it to Friday. Can that really be considered a win? No. That's like when you're in survival mode, and I can't say that I'm not in survival mode right now, but yeah, so I think this week was really good in terms of, I feel like I got a lot of things accomplished in small groups in terms of, right now we're in our animal unit, which is also a nonfiction unit, which involves, reading nonfiction, learning good habits of nonfiction readers, and then of course becoming nonfiction writers. So researching, taking notes. Remember, these are like 6 and 7-year-olds. Taking notes and then turning that into an actual nonfiction writing piece. So I feel like it's needed a bit more scaffolding than other things, because this is really a very new area. So a lot of the small groups, what I've been doing is, like, during our daily 3 reading time, I have students working on, as normal, independent reading and partner reading. They decide what they're doing. But then I have a group working with our TA and doing something related. Like this week we are working on habitat, so she's been focusing on habitats with them during that time. Then I've had a table group that I've had them on the iPads researching their animal that they're writing about during writing workshop. They're researching it on Epic during that time, and then myself working with the group. This week I did not do reading groups. I used to always feel like guided reading was the only way to teach reading, but down the road our school started to embrace conferring and strategy groups as well. And then a couple of years ago, I want to say it was back in 2015, I was very fortunate that my school sent me to Teachers College in New York City for a summer. I mean, it was a 1-week workshop, 5-day workshop during the summer. It wasn't the entire summer. And yeah, it was really nice. And I just remember Lucy Calkin saying that, guided reading groups are one way to teach reading, but it's only one way. So I think after I heard that, I started to embrace more of the conferring and still doing guided reading, but not every single day and not the way I'd done it. And then after that first year, I saw, oh, my students are still becoming readers. Oh, that actually works. So I'm not always going to do a reading group. I kind of vary between one-on-one conferring. Sometimes I'll work with a partnership. Sometimes it will be guided reading. And then sometimes I might just do something very different, which like this week, I actually was working on looking at different animal groups, and I'll speak more about that in today's episode because it kind of goes into the non-linguistic representation. But that's what I kind of focused on because of the 5 animal groups. There was a lot to do with it. So I kind of, instead of actually focusing on me particularly doing a reading group or a strategy group or something like that, we investigated a little bit about animal groups. So that's what I did at my small group time. So I just kind of felt like the whole week the kids really accomplished a lot in terms of their researching and their writing and understanding more about animals. Our big idea, our essential question for this unit is what's so amazing about animals. So they're really discovering that with all this work. So I just felt like it was an amazing week in terms of how much they were able to accomplish. So during our workshop time. So that was really good. That was my win. My fail for the week, it was a very challenging week, you guys. I do feel like I survived the week, and I hate when I have weeks like that, but just inevitably as educators, we are going to have those moments where things feel incredibly difficult. When it rains, it storms, and that's kind of the week that I was having. It just happened to be a week where, every kind of conflict that could occur did occur. Just students arguing with each other, not practicing resolution ideas that we really go over every single day, and we've spent so much time. We even have a resolution, or what we call problem solving wheel, in the classroom. So if for some reason a student can't come up with a way to resolve something, they can go up to the wheel, they can choose something. I don't know, it has been one of those weeks. And then behavior flaring. Now, I've mentioned this in the most recent podcast episodes, it's part of this time of year. That's why I put out the episode about the spring hump, getting over the spring hump. It's very challenging because this is our warm season, the spring is. So temperatures are rising. We have fans, we don't have ACs, but the kids are overheated, they're grumpy, they're frustrated. So, you just kind of they're kind of burned out. We have a long school year. I think our last student day is June 22nd. We've been going since August. So they're just really burning out, and literally too, just burning up because it's so warm. But yeah, so it's one of those weeks where today I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness it's Friday, and not usually someone who's waiting for Friday, but I feel emotionally drained from, there were so many fires that I had to put out this week, just so many things that came up, and I don't want to get into anything specific. So, but there were other issues, like one specifically of something that came up that's been happening that's certainly not okay, and that had to be addressed. So, it just seemed like anything that could have happened, it happened this week. So that's the kind of week I had. That was my fail. I was just kind of in survival mode almost for a week. I don't suggest that, but sometimes when you have a tough week, you go into survival mode. So it was good to kind of make it to Friday, and today was actually a pretty good day. So yeah, I feel like it was a very challenging week. I made it through, and I need to get a lot of rest this weekend because also because of some of the things that's been going on and just stress in general and heat. I've had difficulty sleeping through the night, so I've had a few nights where I wake up and I'm up because of the heat. I can't go back to sleep for a while, so I'm not getting all my rest. So definitely, factors like that are going to attribute to the difficulty. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting some rest, and I'm hoping that next week we are going to be able to really choose effective strategies in resolving conflicts and issues as they come up. I'm really looking forward to that. I've talked to the kids that, we need to make that choice. They all know the right answers. They know what they're supposed to be doing. But it's, they also have to choose to do those things as well. So that was my fail for the week. My fail was the week. Just kidding. Or am I? Just kidding. I'm sure I am. I'm sure that was a joke. Okay, enough of my sarcasm. Let's move on to today's topic, which is Nonlinguistic Representation PLC Part 2. So as was discussed in much previous episode, and maybe while I'm recording this, I can even try to look up and see if I can find what that was. But in a much previous one, I started part 1, like I said, really with the idea that I would be doing multiple ones of these because this has been a year-long PLC. But I just found that a lot of what I was doing with the non-linguistic representation could be done, but in a different academic area or in a different way. So it didn't make sense to make multiple episodes, although there's still a lot I feel like I could do and would like to do. But so I think I won't. My first vision was like, this might be a little mini series, but no, it won't be. Today we'll kind of finish up what I've been doing. So in my grade level, every grade level at our school is conducting a PLC. So the grade level leaders in each grade are running it. So I'm the grade level leader of our grade of pre-first, and I am as such in charge of facilitating this PLC. It's basically based on a lot of Marzano's work. So if you're familiar with his work and research and findings, it is based on Marzano. But not totally. I mean, I've definitely looked up other information and resources to supplement this. By the way, I'm finding this was episode 25, so I'll include the first part so I'll include that in the show notes. But episode 25 was the non-linguistic representation, part 1. Okay, so that's basically where it stems from. So we started the PLC looking at what ways can we teach non-linguistically, but also what can students do non-linguistically that will enhance their learning, because after doing some of the Marzano reading and other things we were finding, it seems that there is a huge impact in student learning when they're able to tie in non-linguistic, maybe coupled or in addition to linguistic. Not always, but there's a huge benefit to their learning. So not just in the teaching aspect. So we kind of looked at that, and it has been such an excellent journey. I feel like I have grown so much as a teacher this year in the things that I've learned. So probably some of what I might have shared with you last time, I'm just going to kind of briefly go over things that I'd been doing, so I can also talk about things that I am now doing that might be a little bit different or in addition to what I've been doing. And to give us even more background knowledge, there is an article that I will link in the show notes. It's an ASCD.org article, and it is by Robert J. Marzano. And it's called The Art and Science of Teaching Representing Knowledge Non-Linguistically. It looks like this was included in the May 2010 volume 67 number 8 catalog, or I guess it was a catalog, I'm not even sure, but that's how it comes up online. And it says it was in the Key to Changing the Teaching Profession, pages 84 to 86. So I will link this in the show notes so you have that and you can check it out yourself. But just to kind of build a little bit of background here on what Marzano really says about the non-linguistic representation. Some of this I will quote, some I might just kind of summarize. But it says, students have plenty of opportunities to process information linguistically. They listen to teachers explain content, they read and write about content, but they do have fewer opportunities in school to actually process information non-linguistically. And of course, this is me speaking, that makes sense when you think about how much teacher talk time happens. When they're processing teacher talk time, they're having to process linguistically. So what they're saying is there's more processing linguistically than there is processing non-linguistically of information. So even though educators have known for some time that the human mind processes incoming information in these two primary modes, so that would be non-linguistic and linguistic. Because the linguistic mode does not necessarily involve formal rules of language, this kind of processing is technically referred to as semantic. Then the second mode of processing involves constructing images of incoming information. Images can refer not only to mental images, but to smells, tastes, kinesthetic sensations such as how hot or how cold something feels. Because this mode of processing goes beyond visual imagery, we refer to it more broadly as non-linguistic. And I really think of myself as, a learner of Spanish, where, if you've been listening for a while, you know that I live in Mexico. I've been down here for 9 years, well, just about 9 years. So at this point where I'm recording, I'm about 2 months away from hitting my 9 years that I've been here. So it was incredibly difficult in the beginning in my transition to living in a foreign country, because you are constantly making sense of the language and the sense of the signs and the billboards and trying to put things into context and trying to use gestures with words. I mean, I just remember that first year as cognitively super demanding and exhausting. I mean, I remember telling my husband, I can't stand all the Spanish 24/7. I mean, it sounds weird, but obviously if you're going to a foreign country, you have that language around you all the time. But the fact that you can't turn it off, every time you turn something on, it's in Spanish. You go somewhere, you're having to communicate in Spanish. You see a billboard, you see a sign, whatever it is, everything is in Spanish. And the having to make sense of it all, it is so very incredibly challenging. But as a language learner, I could not rely on the language alone, which is why I think, and this is not just for me, I know many teachers here who feel the same way, I absolutely dread having to make a phone call in Spanish. And I believe it's because I have nothing visually that can help me. I'm purely having to purely rely on the language part of it. And, when I'm having a one-on-one conversation in person, there's no problem. I mean, there are things that I might miss here and there. So I don't want to be like, oh, I know every word there is in Spanish and I never have a difficulty. No, that's not it. Obviously, after 9 years, there's, I can get around pretty easily in terms of with the language. But I rely so much on gestures and different things that will help me make sense of the words, because sometimes there will be a word that I don't know, but I can make sense of it in context, or there's, something visual that just aids me, or maybe I just feel that way, I don't know, but it definitely seems like on the phone, when I'm having to rely on just language, it causes so much dread. That's my last thing I want to do, is make a phone call in Spanish. That's just the way it is. So it's interesting in terms of, looking at the different ways that we do process information, because it's true. And I can see that in myself as a second language learner. Okay, continuing on with the article. Non-linguistic strategies require students to generate a representation of new information that does not rely on language. In the hundreds of action research projects that we've conducted with teachers throughout the years, this approach is one of the most commonly studied, specifically across 129 studies with one class, but not I skipped a line, in which teachers use non-linguistic strategies such as graphic organizers, sketches, and pictographs with one class, but not with another class studying the same content. The average effect was a 17 percentile point gain in student achievement. So, it's pretty big on the effect power. So non-linguistic, when we hear it, maybe the term sounds fancy and then we're like, oh yeah, I use a lot of non-linguistics. I use graphic organizers. We use pictures. We act out our stories. We create timelines and concept maps. But I think it really validates, this kind of research really validates the use of these things, and especially in drawings and sketches, where someone might say, that's a lot of drawing, or, there's whatever. They might not see the validity in the drawing or the visual representation as much if they didn't understand what power it has and what effect it has on it. I know even before we did this PLC, we've always, in terms of our writing, because our students come in as non-writers and they become writers along the school year, during the school year. But we rely on their sketches first. First they sketch, then they write. And the sketches hold their story for them, and they can go back and they can add details, because a lot of times as beginning writers, and even probably as developing writers, their instinct is to be a little more limited in their details, but then we refer them back to their own sketches and say, well, look at this, you added this here, you can write about that in your story. So there's so much there. And it also shows us that, let's say it's a student who wasn't really able to write too much, which is very much the case in the beginning, but we can see that, that student actually could come up with an idea on his or her own. We can see sequence in there. We can see that it actually makes sense. So you can still get a lot of information about the process that the student was going through, even though maybe they couldn't get all the words out, or as second language learners, their words sometimes are not as grammatic, or it's maybe jumbled, or doesn't immediately make sense to the native speaker. So we have to kind of try to understand what he or she was saying, or trying to write. So in that sense, it's absolutely fantastic. So some of the things that I'd been doing in the beginning of the school year, as we started the PLC, was really including more images in my own teaching. I mean, as a teacher of young students, I do that anyway. I rely a lot on images, but this year I've really beefed that up. So I've been using images to hold instructions for them. So what I mean by that is, first of all, and I'm so guilty of this, many times I would write the instruction, number one, whatever number one is, and explain it to them, read it to them, and hope that they hold meaning in the sentence that they can't read. And sometimes with the visual, sometimes not, but I feel almost over relying on a sentence that I've probably wasted my time writing. So now what I do is I'm able to give instructions through a picture. And so they capture meaning through the picture. When they look at the picture, they can remember what the instruction was because it's attached to the image, which is fantastic when you have young learners who can't really read, or what they can read is so limited that a whole lot of written instructions don't really help the situation. So it's been nice. I do this a lot in, let's say, like math workshop when I'm giving instructions. Usually there are multiple steps involved in one of the opening activities that we do, which is the math journal. So step one, they do a sketch. I will draw a stick man, and they know automatically that means that you are going to sketch out the math problem. Then step two, a number bond. So that's kind of nice. A number bond, I just draw a number bond. They can already attach the meaning to that because they know what that is. And then a fact family, and I just do like a line with a plus sign, another line equals, and then another line, and then they know that's a fact family. And then sometimes I have them do place value, and I'll just kind of draw a quick little place value mat. And then sometimes it might be, do tally marks to show how many there are altogether, and then I'll just draw one set of tally marks so that they know that they need to include tally marks. And it's worked amazingly because then they just attach the meaning, and if they forget a step, I can say, oh, can you look at the board? Can you check that you did all those steps? Or, oh, can you look at the board and can you check that you did step 3? And they don't have to say, well, I can't read it. What is that step asking me to do? They look at the visual and they automatically, well, not automatically, I've explained it at some point. They know what that is. So that's been a fantastic tool. Not so much maybe in their learning, but in the ability for me to relay information or instructions to them, which helps in a little bit more of independence on their part because they can quickly look and see. So that's been great. I've also been connecting an image, one of my own sketches, with our snap words, which are the high frequency words. So we teach 5 a week. And it's not so easy because you have to think of a way to represent the word. And some of them, if it's like a word is, you have to think about how would I use that in a sentence, and then how can I represent that word. So for this week, the word is, I used an example. I drew a picture of an apple and made my sentence, this apple is healthy. So it really helps them to understand. I mean, I actually have been blown away by the power of that visual attachment to it and helping them. And really especially because they're second language learners, and a lot of these words can be difficult for them to come up with sentences, or even like understanding how to use it in a sentence correctly. But it's been very effective, and then it helps them to transfer. After I've done several, they get the idea of how to represent it. So then one thing they'll do, usually at the end of the week, one of their word work activities would be to represent each snap word of the week. So that entails them thinking of a sentence and then representing it. So they have to know how to use the word. A higher step up to that would be to then share those sentences, because that's one of the things that Marzano shows is most effective, is then when they get to share that piece. So not just creating it, but then also using it to share. That's been something that I've been wanting to work on, but haven't always included that every week. So that's still an ongoing goal for me. So I've been doing a lot of that, and then The last few months working a lot with sketchnoting. You know, there was an episode that I did with Carrie Bauckham. She's great. She is fantastic. And if you haven't listened to that episode that I have her on talking about sketchnoting, definitely go back and listen to it. It is so worth it. She just, you know, she is really the queen of sketchnoting, I think, because she just, I mean, that's one of her passions. It's not her only passion, but definitely one of her passions. So go back and listen to that. But that's been one of my things that I've been doing a lot of in terms of non-linguistic representation. So it really requires, oh, by the way, that was episode 36. So it's called Sketchnoting with Carrie Bauckham. So go and check that out. Okay, so sketchnoting. So it really requires taking in some kind of information and then processing the information. So what does it need? What does it mean? What do I understand about it? And then pausing and then sketching out what you've learned. And, you know, like anything else, your initial understanding may not be 100% accurate. There might be, you know, you might modify your learning later along the way, but it's just a way to, like, it's a way to kind of get out what you're understanding. And you know, while you're doing that, you might even be modifying some of your learning as you're trying to process what it is that you've done. So I've been doing a lot of sketchnoting characters. So one of the things that we do is like really focusing on story elements. So understanding that a story is going to have characters, a story is going to have a sequence of events, a story is going to have a setting. And for a long time, well, I shouldn't say a long time, but for a couple of months, that was my intense focus. And oh my goodness, the kids have gotten so good at even understanding those terms, because it was, okay, we would read a book and, okay, sketch out the characters, sketch out the setting, and then sketch the different sequence of events. And they got really good at that. It's been, you know, one of those things that I love. And one of the things that Carrie has shown on in her videos, because she has a YouTube channel, is like you can use Post-it to sketch note on, and I've totally taken that on. So that's been good. A lot of sketchnoting. Right now that we are doing our animal unit, we've been doing a lot of sketchnoting on Post-its about different animal groups. That was actually one of the things that I said I was working on this past week in group. So we're learning about 5 animal groups: fish, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, and birds. I almost forgot the last category. And so we did some sketching of what we already knew about these animal groups. And then we, in my small groups, we did a read aloud, and they learned a little bit more. Specifically, as I read the read aloud, the instructions were listen to learn something new about mammals or reptiles, whatever it is. I feel it's really important to always, if there's a focus, which normally there's always a focus, tell your students what that focus is. What should they be listening out for? Because that's going to make even your work easier. Because if they don't know what is going to be asked of them afterwards, then they could totally miss it. But in this case, they're given the focus. They know what they should be on the lookout for, and that's going to help them, and it's going to help you. So then I would do the read aloud, and then, okay, now you're going to sketch and sketch what else you learned about this animal group. And then we created posters with the 5 groups, and they just stick their Post-its on. So it kind of captures their learning. Something else you could do with it is keep going back and, you know, modifying their learning. But I feel like I have so many Post-its because I had the whole class put it on the poster that it might be a little tedious for them to go back and find their own. So I don't know, I might have to do that differently when it's maybe on their own they have their own maybe individual poster, and they keep it and they get to alter it. I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. And then one of the newest ways that I am utilizing non-linguistic representation in my class is vocabulary and assigning motions to the vocabulary words. So this was something we'd actually watched I can't think of the name of it now, but a video from, it's not TeacherTube, but it's one of those where the videos of different teachers putting on, their own instruction and whatnot. Anyway, I think it's called total response or whole body response. I don't really remember the actual term to it, but we watched a video in one of our PLC meetings where they did this, where they, for every vocabulary word, they assigned a special movement, and it helped the students to remember the meaning of the word. So this actual, this is going to be my last focus of the year. I'm trying to tie in vocabulary. So I thought, well, what better opportunity? We're in this animal unit. They have some new, and in some cases, challenging vocabulary words. So one of our teachers came up with some motions, and we're all kind of testing it out. So some of our terms, we've got 4 main terms or 4 main areas that students are researching in the animal unit. I'm tying in. I just thought I'm going to start with the 4 words, see how this works. I like to start small and then build up. I didn't want to say, let me start with these 20 vocabulary words and tie different movements that I'm not going to even remember. No, I'm starting with the 4 basic ones that they're researching, and then I can add on. But okay, so physical characteristics, and what they do is you take your 2 hands, and your left hand moves to the left, your right hand moves to the right, and you repeat physical characteristics. And we say that it's what they look like. So then the movement tied in with the speech kind of helps them to remember physical characteristics. It's what they look like. Then habitat, and we make a motion of like a triangle, so it's the roof of a house, and it's where they live. So when we say habitat, they make the sign and they say it's where they live. And then behavior, and then we kind of pound our chest lightly, just light pound. It's what they do. And then the last one is food. This one is an easy one because they do know this word. And then we just put your hand to your mouth like you're eating. It's what they eat. So these are the 4 vocabulary words that I've tested out so far. And it's, oh my goodness, this is ingenious, you guys. I mean, try it out. It's funny, we taught it and then the kids really like it. So every now and again, I throw it in. So maybe at the end of reading workshop, or maybe when I work in a group, we'll warm up with those. Maybe at the end of writing workshop, wherever I can throw it in just to have a little more exposure to it. It's great. And I've just seen the kids are actually learning the terms, because every year we do this animal unit and they always have a difficult time with physical characteristics. That's the biggest one they have an issue with. And then, the other ones food, they don't ever, but behavior and habitat will be the other 2 that they will sometimes forget. Some of them will sometimes forget, but physical characteristics is the term that always they get stuck on. That has just been from year to year the term that I already know is going to cause issues for them. So I'm excited about this, and as I continue in the unit, I'll possibly be adding on to the list, but I really wanted to first focus on these 4 vocabulary words. I wanted to keep my goal of learning how to tie in the actions with vocabulary. I wanted to keep it very low and then kind of build up. So I think, I'll continue to build up. But it's been marvelous. I feel like this year has been such a fantastic year in terms of growing as a teacher and trying, and these weren't totally new strategies. We've used a lot of visuals, just being a teacher of young learners, you naturally gravitate towards that. But I guess just discovering all the different ways I could use it, the power of the visuals. Oh, and I didn't even mention, but this is not new, something we've been doing for a few years now because it's tied into Lucy Culkin's workshop, but acting out their stories. It's so fantastic, and they love it. They enjoy acting out their book. So initially when you see it, you might be like, oh my goodness, they're playing. What is this? Like, you call that reading? Are you serious, Miss Tammy? What is that about? But actually, if you think about what's happening, they have to process what's happening in their books to be able to act it out. So it requires a little bit, it requires more than passive reading. You definitely are engaging in the text, be it a fiction text or be it a nonfiction text, because actually this week we learned that non-fiction avid readers can act out their nonfiction books just like they do with their fiction books. So yeah, it requires a deeper level of thinking and processing, because you have to figure out what exactly is happening for me to act it out accurately. And they love to do that. They'll do that in partnerships. They'll even do that on their own. But it really makes reading time such a fantastic, beautiful time, I'd say, in the classroom, because it feels very much like play to them when it's reading. And I love when learning and fun can collide. And I know that realistically it won't always be that way, but I do believe that as educators we have the challenge and we have the obligation to make it as interesting and as fun when possible and when appropriate. It should be enjoyable. Learning should be enjoyable. So that's it, you guys. Those are the new things, the old things and the new things that I'm trying out in the classroom. I definitely think it's worth trying out some of these things on your own. Look up the Marzano article. There's so much there, and there's so much to be learned about non-linguistic representation. I've definitely grown this year as a teacher, just seeing the power that it has in my teaching, and then for the students and their own learning. So, it's definitely worth a try. So, that's it, you guys. I've got to wrap this up, but I am interested in hearing from you as always. I love when you reach out to me. I have the blog, which will be in the outro, because I'm not sure I even remember the URL right now. Now I can't remember if I give it out in the outro, but anyway, it'll be linked in the show notes. And then of course everything you can look up on the website, timetoteach.libsyn.com. And it's all out there. And then of course, if you are getting this podcast via a computer or that kind of a device, just know that you can actually subscribe and listen to this podcast and everything else in the podcast through an actual podcast player. That's my preferable way to listen to podcasts and consume podcasts. But of course, computer will work as well, but there are advantages. So anyway, you can find me online. You can find me on anywhere that you listen to podcasts, like iTunes and Stitcher and Heart Radio, and I don't even know where else I am these days. And then last thing that I want to say before we really, really follow it up, you guys, it's May right now and summer is coming, and I will likely be having a modified summer schedule. If you've been a listener for a while, you will know that over the last few vacations, I have had a modified schedule. Either I didn't publish anything new, or maybe that's the only thing I've done, just not publish. But last summer I did publish, because I just launched the podcast in May. So absolutely I did. But I am contemplating a modified summer schedule. And as always, it's because my schedule is not the same in the summer. Any vacation, my husband and I are in and out of the city. We like to spend a lot of time at the beach. So, I just don't have the same schedule that I can rely on. So I'm figuring that out. I don't know if you have ideas, you can tweet to me. You can even message me and email me. But let me know if you have any ideas, because I'm still trying to figure it out. But I did want you to know that is a very strong possibility. Modified schedule. I don't know what that would look like right now. I don't know if it would be every other week, or maybe it would just, be every 3 weeks. I don't know. I don't know yet what that will be. So I don't know, but I will definitely let you know of any final decisions. Okay, you guys, that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for joining me. I, as always, realize that your podcast options are so vast, and if you're choosing to listen to me, I am so extremely flattered, because I'm just little old me living my little old life. But thank you so much for choosing to listen to Time to Teach. I appreciate that, and always look forward to growing together with other educators. It's my passion. That's why I do this. But it's an absolute passion. So in any case, that's it. Signing off, saying bye. And until next time, I'll see you then. Wait a minute. Wait 1 minute. Before you go, don't forget you can catch our show notes online at www.timetoteach.libsyn. That's libsyn.com. We're also on Facebook at Time to Teach. Don't forget to check out our Facebook group, Teachers for Effective Curriculum. And if you're an educator with your own podcast show, I invite you to join our brand new Facebook group, Teachers Who Podcast. Let's grow a community where we can network, problem solve, and discuss anything and everything podcast related. I'll see you there.